just get this shared. Good morning, everybody. We'll get just started in 1 second. We'll let a few more people hop in. Here we go. Quite a crowd today. Okay, so welcome everybody to our webinar about the coronavirus stimulus package, CARES Act, and what you need to know for your business. I'm Chris Lazarus, the Education Chair for the Cobb Association of Realtors and host of the Rethink Real Estate podcast. We're so excited that you're able to join us today. So thank you for taking the time out of your day to be here. I want to thank the Cobb Association of Realtors and Barry Arnold for putting this together and working with all the other boards throughout the state to make sure that we can get this out to as many people as possible. We know that your business is the number one thing that you're worried about as we go into this. So we're going to answer a lot of questions today. Now, we're going to have a lot of participants here. Just know if you're on, great morning, Ruby. Good morning, Kristen. If you're on, we can't see you. So if your camera's on, we can't see you. This is set up as a webinar, not as a normal Zoom meeting. So as we get into this, we're going to have a lot of people here. Please go ahead, and there's a Q&A section at the bottom that you can click on and ask questions. We will do our best to get them answered as we go through. Also, feel free to take a look at the poll that we have going on. And we're going to cover a lot of ground this morning. Today, we're here with Chad Brown. And Chad is a partner and CFO of the Tax Shelter. Now, the Tax Shelter is a CPA firm based out of Athens, Georgia. They have multiple locations, and they serve business owners all across the U.S. Chad is uniquely positioned because not only is he a partner in the tax firm, but he has 6 other businesses that he owns and operates outside of tax season. And these things range from cleaning companies to a chicken farm. So Chad, thank you so much for joining us this morning and coming to speak to our realtors all across the state.
Thanks, Chris. Thank you all for having me. I'm excited to join you on Friday and share some of the updates and things with the stimulus. It's been a crazy last 2 weeks with changes daily and a lot of questions, and happy to share what I'm experiencing, what I'm learning from my side regarding the stimulus and everything that's going on right now in the Corona environment.
Well, thank you for taking your time. We've already got a bunch of questions that are starting to come in. So just know if you're asking a question, we will get to them. We're going to have a Q&A section at the end of the webinar, and we will be trying to answer some clarity questions as we go through. Now, if we can't get to all of the questions today, we will be reaching out with everybody with answers after the webinar. So just please make sure that you go through and ask your questions as we go along with this. Chad, let's go ahead and dive right in. I think that the number one question people have right now is, what is this stimulus check, and am I going to get one?
Great question. So the stimulus check on the individual side is probably the hottest topic right now and the most trending item. A lot of questions, a lot of concerns over that. So everybody is eligible to get the stimulus check unless you are married jointly and make over 198,000, or you file single and make over around 100 grand. So you can phase it out on the income side if you make over 100 and you file single, or you make over around 200 and you file married. It starts phasing out at a little lower level, and it phases out about $5 per $100 you make over the phase out. That is, I see a question there. Is that gross or take home? That is gross. So that's based on the AGI of your tax return. So if you filed a 19 return, it'll go by that. If you have not filed 19, it'll go by your 18 return. And the way the stimulus is set up right now is it's $1,200 per person and $500 per child up to the age of 17. Once they turn 17, they're not considered a child anymore. You don't get that 500. If they're filing a return on their own or they are claiming themselves, then they will pick up that 1,200. If you are claiming them as a child still, as a dependent, and they're 18, 19, or 20, then they're not going to be eligible for the advance. Now, here's the thing to know. Here's the piece that's confusing a lot of people is this is an advance credit. These checks that are getting ready to come out, these deposits that are getting ready to be sent is an advance on a 2020 tax credit. So if you don't get it right now, or you don't qualify right now for some reason, when you file your 2020 tax return, you will pick it up at that time as a refund credit. So just because you made too much in 19 doesn't mean it's gone forever. If your income drops in 20, then you can still qualify. Or if you claimed your child as a dependent in 19, but they were too old to get it, and they file on their own in 2020, they will then pick up that $1,200 credit at that time. So, and here's the other awesome part about it. If you qualify right now and then you do not qualify when you file your 2020 tax return, you don't have to pay it back. It is a win-win. If you don't qualify now and you do when you file the return, you get it. If you qualify now and you don't when you file your 2020 return, you don't have to pay it back. There is no payback. There is no owing it back. There is no repaying it. You get it now, it's yours to keep. You get it when you file your 2020 tax return, it's yours to keep. It is a stimulus that's not going to be subject to being taxed on your tax return on the federal side, and is not going to be subject to being paid back. Another question I'm getting a lot is, are they going to hold my stimulus check if I owe taxes? If I owed in 19 or I owe back taxes? They are not. This stimulus check is not going to get offset by previous owed taxes or previous items owed to the IRS. The only thing that's going to offset the stimulus check would be child support. And we're not even certain that's going to happen, but we have read in multiple places that the child support does have the potential to offset that check.
Okay. So if they are over 17, they no longer qualify for the child, so you don't get that 500. But if they're working and they've filed taxes, do they get the 1,200?
It depends. So when you file taxes, you have an option to claim yourself or not. I have a lot of clients that have a 19-year-old in college. They're working a little bit. They're filing their own return, but not claiming themselves. They're still claimed on the parent's return. If you are claimed on the parent's return and you're over 17, you currently do not qualify for this stimulus. Not the 500 for being a child under 17 or the 1,200 filing on your own. Now, when this person, this 19-year-old, gets ready to file their 2020 return, they can then choose to claim themselves and pick that 1,200 up at that time. But it's going to be a real-time calculation. It's going to be trying to figure out, as parents, are you going to come out better claiming the child on your return and picking up the benefits there? Or is the 1,200 going to be more valuable for the child to claim themselves and file on their own return? And so it's going to be a calculation that your tax professional, your CPA, needs to make in real time. They need to sit down with both returns and try it both ways and figure out the cost versus benefit there.
Awesome. Thank you. Chad, what if prior taxes are owed?
If prior taxes are owed, it will not offset the stimulus. No.
Okay, so they'll still get
federal taxes.
the check because
That's right.
the stimulus check is a credit off of 2020's check or taxes, right?
That's right.
Okay.
And,
So
and essentially it's an advance. They're just sending it out now to stimulate the economy. They've created a brand new, never existed before 2020 tax credit. and they're sending it to everybody in advance. Now, I see a question on here about what if I'm drawing Social Security and I do not file taxes? Even if you have zero income, you still qualify for this stimulus. The only way you do not qualify is if you phase out the income limit, if you make too much. If you're on Social Security, you're going to qualify. If you have $0 in income, you still qualify. It is for everybody under those amounts where you phase out.
So it doesn't matter the age. It doesn't matter if they're currently income. If they have Social Security and it's fixed income, if they file a tax return, they get it. Now, what if they haven't filed a tax return in the last few years?
So if you hadn't filed a tax return in the last couple of years, if you're on Social Security or Social Security disability, they have your information. They're going to send it to you. So if you haven't filed and you're drawing some version of Social Security, you're fine. They're going to get you the check. They don't get you the direct deposit. If you have not filed in a couple of years because you're older or you haven't had enough income to file, you're going to need to file a 2020 tax return. You could still right now jump in and file a 19 if you want to get it early. You file a tax return, you're not going to owe any taxes. You're just essentially giving the IRS your information and giving them the access to give you the stimulus. So you could go ahead and do 19 really quick and try to get the advance now, or you can just wait, file a return at the end of 2020 and pick up your $1,200 at that point. So it's your choice whether to go ahead and pay to have a 19 tax return filed or come in after the fact and do a 2020. I have seen, and this is promoting my competitor a little bit on the online side, but I will share some information that is helpful to a lot of people. Intuit and TurboTax has created a portal. If you don't have to file, you can file a zero return or a small return, and supposedly it's free. So you may be able to jump online on TurboTax, quickly file a 19 return and qualify for the stimulus and get the $1,200, or do the same thing at the end of this year once you close out 2020.
Awesome. So now we've got a lot to cover, so we can come back to a lot of these questions. But there's also unemployment benefits, and we've got things are changing every day. Can you talk a little bit about what's available to us as realtors and independent contractors on the unemployment benefit side? Because NAR sent out something and it says that, unprecedented unemployment insurance.
Absolutely. And unprecedented is the right word. We're getting a lot of that here recently. So historically, unemployment has only existed for W-2 employees. It wasn't an option for self-employed. It wasn't an option for a 1099 contractor. It wasn't an option for a business owner that didn't get a W-2. So the stimulus they passed, as part of the $2 trillion stimulus, was an unemployment version that reimburses the state $600 per person to draw more unemployment if you're a W-2 employee, or to be eligible for unemployment if you're a 1099 or independent contractor. So for the first time ever, a real estate agent that's a 1099 contractor or an independent contractor can go apply and draw unemployment. You do not qualify for the state portion. You are qualifying for the federal version, which is up to $600 per week, which is pretty huge. And again, this has never existed before. Now, here's what you need to know, and here's what I'm seeing a ton of this week. A lot of people are going into the state here in Georgia, the Georgia Department of Labor. They're applying for unemployment benefits, and they're getting denied. It is not ready yet for independent contractors. It's going to be next week before that portal and that access is ready. Keep in mind, the feds just passed this stimulus package a week ago. All the states have to build software, applications, and portals for self-employed and 1099 contractors, very much like a lot of you agents out there. So what you'll do when it's ready next week in Georgia, you'll go in, you'll apply, and you'll submit weekly. And that qualifies you for up to 4 months of the federal stimulus unemployment, which again is up to $600 per week. The application is not ready yet. I don't know if they're going to ask for any information. I don't know if they're going to ask for previous 1099s. We don't know if they're going to ask for deposits. On the employee, on the traditional employee W-2 side, they don't have to ask for anything because they've got payroll and payroll reports that's been submitted. So this is a brand new territory for the states and the federal government. Now, it was released yesterday that Georgia is going to be ahead of most all other states. They've been working really hard to get this active, and it will go active next week. So here in Georgia, you're going to have an opportunity to apply next week. They are going to make it retroactive for a week or two. So if you've experienced closings that got canceled, or you experienced a decrease in work or in income coming in as an agent over the last couple of weeks, it's going to be retroactive to go back and cover $600 per week for at least a week, maybe 2 weeks. And again, this is a 4-month opportunity. And from my understanding, you are able to couple this with existing income that still may come in, and they're going to offset that difference. If you have 200 come in for the week, then instead of 600, you're going to qualify for 400. So from my understanding right now, it's an adjustment based on what's coming in versus the max of 600 per week. Now, here's the kicker for the real estate side. And I've read a lot of articles on this. I've asked questions. I've done research. We've reached out to SBA. We've reached out on the local side. Nobody has any clarity here. How are they going to treat previously earned income? If you're getting a commission check that you earned a month ago or you earned 3 weeks ago, how is that going to be treated for unemployment? We don't know. What we're being told is they're only should consider current income. Anything you're getting paid for prior work or prior commissions or prior income should not be included in your weekly pay or should not affect your unemployment, but we don't really know right now. So that's a big question out there. But keep in mind, don't go apply right now. Don't get on the Department of Labor website. The portal for self-employed people are not active. Isn't active yet, so it's not ready. They're working on it. And also, you just got to have a little patience, because you mentioned unprecedented. Last week, the last 7 days, more people in Georgia have applied for unemployment than the entire year of 2019. So you've got a Department of Labor in 7 days had more applications than in 12 entire months. Plus, they're working from home and on a mandate running a skeleton crew. So this is a tough time for everybody. So just have a little patience on that side. It'll all work out.
So patience is key, and we're there. It sounds like there's still some things that are being worked out. So with what happens if they've already applied for unemployment? Why they're going to have to go back and reapply?
They are. If you've already applied and you didn't hear anything back, or you applied and got denied, you're going to have to go back in. There'll be a completely different system, a completely different portal for you for the self-employed, independent contractor side. So you'll just go back in and apply.
A lot of real estate agents and realtors throughout the state are part-time. So what happens if they have a portion of income, but then it's reduced? Can they still apply then?
You can, but keep in mind, this is working with a global picture of what's going on with income for you. Okay. So you've got essentially 3 things that are going to factor in. You've got your normal state unemployment. The state of Georgia, if you get furloughed or you get laid off or under this emergency situation, if you're working less hours, the state of Georgia unemployment insurance has a formula that covers approximately about 60% of your pay if you're out of work or you're working less. So that's a part that's kicking in if you have a W-2 and you're working somewhere else and you're just a part-time agent. If you've been furloughed there, if you've been laid off there, if your business is closed that you were working for on the side where you were a W-2 employee, then you need to file unemployment for that. So that's going to kick in and get you around 60% of your pay on that side. Now, the federal portion is going to come in and help on that side as well. It's going to bump that 60 up to 100. And again, for Georgia, it's going to kick in sometime next week. Depending on where you land there on weekly benefit, if it's still under the maximum amount, you can still apply for the 1099 contractor unemployment
Gotcha.
on the federal side as well. So you've got a lot of moving parts and pieces. If you have multiple jobs, or if you're W-2 and a part-time agent for a 1099, there's opportunity for you to take advantage of this. But essentially, it gets capped out on the state level. Is capped out. I think they've increased it. It was like 355 per week. I think it's up to closer to 400 now. So the state side is capping out around 400. The federal cap's at 600. So the most you could draw, no matter if you had 10 jobs and were laid off all of them, is 1,000 per week, which 1,000 per week is again pretty good
Yeah.
money for staying at home and not working.
And what about Social Security? If somebody's getting Social Security, does that count against the global income as well?
It does. It's going to factor into that weekly income. I don't know what formula they use for Social Security, but it does have to be reported. Um, I know typically with Social Security, you can have another job, but you can't make over a certain amount, 15, 16 grand before it starts getting reduced. So that Social Security is going to factor into that formula. The DOL hasn't been very clear on how that's going to impact the contractor side or the 1099 side. I think a lot of those details you're just not going to see for at least another 2 weeks down the road. It's a lot of these situations we're seeing is they're unveiling the program and they're figuring out the details after the fact. So
Yeah.
things are going to continue to change for at least a 2 week period on this unemployment side. So just know that, expect that, apply for it. Right now, you really can't do anything that jeopardizes you or harms you. Anything you're applying for, anything you're doing, uh, you're not going to get yourself in a position where you really get in trouble, because a lot of these details and clarity just aren't known yet. And they're going to have to, after the fact, look at some of these items. One thing to know too, this is big from a tax standpoint to protect you when you get to the end of this year. This $600 per week and unemployment in general is taxable. So the stimulus check coming is not taxable. The unemployment you draw is taxable. And you can choose, whenever you fill out the application, when it's ready, you can choose to have taxes taken out on the state and federal level or not, but it is taxed just the same as ordinary income. So you will be taxed on your unemployment benefits.
Okay, so it is income, it is taxable. So it seems like whether it's Social Security or a second job, it all goes to this global picture of what your income is, and then that's going to be run through their algorithm to figure out how much you qualify for. And
That's right.
so is that for anything, whether that's a pension or rent coming in as income? What is there any differentiation? Is there anything that doesn't count into that global picture?
Um, there's not, and again, this is all new. Historically, it's all just been based on W-2 income and how your W-2 income was reduced, how your payroll was reduced. This new portal, a new unprecedented time of being able to draw unemployment for 1099 contractors or independent contractors or people that have rental property that factor into it. There's all sorts of things going to come into play here, and we just don't know how yet. Now, I know a lot of situations, if you draw pensions, if you draw Social Security, if you draw things, those things are continuing to come monthly. So that alone may be enough to disqualify you for being able to get unemployment. Again, if you're drawing, a few $1,000s a month from some of these other areas, that in itself may be enough to disqualify you from being able to receive some of these unemployment benefits. But we just don't know all those details and all those formulas yet. But again, I think we're a week away from knowing and having a lot more clarity there. The SBA and DC and the stimulus package side committee, they've just been trying to get these things out. They haven't had time or the way to communicate all these things with bankers and with states and with DOLs and with independent contractors and with Social Security and with pensions. So they're very much figuring this out as they go, but they know time is of the essence, and they know businesses and contractors and everybody is struggling right now. So their number one priority, Let's get money out as absolutely fast as we can. Then we'll figure a lot of these things out.
Awesome. Trying to keep up with some of these questions. We've got some great ones. And
Awesome.
we're not going to be able to get to all of these questions today. But what we're going to focus on now is, you mentioned drawing income. Now, one of the things that was passed was they can suspend the early withdrawal requirements of the minimum distributions on retirement accounts, correct?
That's correct. So part of the provision is they have suspended the 10% early withdrawal penalty. Historically, you had to be over 59 and a half to pull money out of an IRA. And an IRA means any sort of retirement account, 401k, Roth, SEP, Simple, all those things. Keep in mind, though, this is not all that valuable to you. You are only getting a waiver of the 10% early withdrawal penalty. It's still taxed. So I had a client yesterday. He asked me, I see where they're waiving withdrawal penalty for up to 100 grand. Should I pull 100 grand out of my retirement account right now to have just in case, or to do something else with? And in his case, he's in the 28% federal bracket and he's in the 6% state bracket. So he is sitting there looking at a 34% tax on that money being pulled from that retirement account. So he is saving the 10% early withdrawal penalty, but he is still going to pay $34,000 in tax to pull 100 grand out. So I rarely see a situation where it makes sense to pull money out right now just because you're getting a waiver of a 10% early withdrawal penalty. Also, too, keep in mind, most funds are invested in the stock market. The stock market is doing extremely well this week, but it's still down. It's still down 20 to 25% over what it was back in January and February. So when you start pulling money out of your retirement account, not only are you taxed, in his case, 34%, you're also selling off stocks at a huge discount. So from a long-term 5-year picture, unless you had to have it, unless you really need it for your business or your family to survive, I would highly recommend not taking advantage of that option just to save 10% in early withdrawal.
Gotcha. So
And
you're still
also,
paying.
yeah, and keep in mind too, some 401ks you can borrow against. You don't have to pull the funds. You can actually take a loan out against it, pay yourself interest. So that may be a much better option.
Awesome. So basically, the taxes are still there. They're just waiving the 10% early withdrawal penalty. So you still end up paying the taxes if you pull the money out. So we've got a lot of questions to go through. I want to get moving along here. Tax deadline. They've extended the tax deadline to July 15th. Are the estimated tax payments also extended there?
That's right. So you don't have to make any first quarter estimated payments. If you're a 1099 agent, you're an independent agent, you've been paying estimated quarterly taxes. And essentially, instead of getting to the end of the year and having to write a big $20,000 check, you're choosing to pay $5,000 per quarter and pay those in as estimated payments. Not only is the filing and payment deadline for your 19 taxes extended to July 15th, your first quarter estimated payment is as well. Now, what this means is your first quarter payment is extended till July. So your first and second quarter payment is going to be due at the same time, unless they push that. There's a chance they may push that as we get a little closer, but right now you don't have to pay anything right now. You don't have to file anything right now. There's no penalties. There's no interest. It just allows you to hang on to your cash and hang on to things to get through this tough time. Now, here's what I recommend from my side, from the tax side. There's no reason not to go ahead and file your return. Mm-hmm. You can go ahead and file and just choose not to pay until July. Filing, gets it done. It's out of the way. It's one less thing you got to worry about. You probably got more time on your hands right now than ever to get all your documents and things together. And here's the important part. You know where you stand. Are you going to owe $2,000? Are you going to get $2,000 back? Are you going to owe $10,000? Knowing that now and knowing you've got several months to plan and pay for it is huge, instead of finding out July 7th you owe 10 grand and you've got 7 days to pay it. So I recommend, even though there is an extension to file and pay, I would go ahead and file and then just postpone the payment. I think that's
That
the
way you
smart
know.
play.
Yeah, that way you know what you're going to pay. And if you get a return, like you still get the return now too, and that can be on top of everything else, right?
That's right. Yep. And
Okay.
refunds are still moving pretty fast. We're still seeing a lot of refunds get processed in, 14 to 16 days. So if you're getting a refund, file it. You go and get your money back. You get the stimulus on top of it. Be sitting in a pretty good place.
Awesome. So for right now, we're going to spend a good 20 to 25 minutes on the PPP plan and the EIDL, which is the Economic Injury Disaster Loan. But one last question on personal finance before we get into that. Lenders have started working with people. So if we have a lot of clients that have mortgages, go figure, it's kind of the industry. What should we tell them if they're having a hard time making their payments right now?
Great question. So if you can make your payment, if you can make your mortgage payment, if you can make your rental property payment, I encourage you to make it. I think this thing is going to get better faster than people believe. And this is just my opinion. If you have the money, if you're not in a tight spot, I think you're going to come out better off making your normal payments if you can. If you cannot, or if you're worried about what happens with your business or things in the future and you want to hang on to as much cash as possible, be really careful. You have got to communicate with your lender and your mortgage company and find out the details. Because here's what I'm hearing. Almost everybody across the board is offering somewhere between a 30 and 90, maybe even up to 180-day deferment of your payment. If you call your lender, if you call your mortgage company, they're going to give you a 1 month, 2 month, or 3 month deferral pretty much across the board right now. Now, here's where it gets really tricky. A lot of lenders are saying in 90 days, you're all of a sudden going to owe all 3 payments. This is a deferral. This is not a forgiveness. So are you going to be in a position, if you have a $2,000 a month payment, to all of a sudden pay $6,000 at one time? I've got other mortgage companies that are saying they're going to tack it on to the end. They're going to take these 3 payments they're deferring right now. It's going to add to the life of your mortgage, which is great. It gives you some forgiveness right now and some freedom right now, but it's just pushing kind of more loan payments and more interest down the road.
Yeah.
You've got to know what the process and the plan is from your lender or mortgage company before I think you can make an educated decision to pay it or not to pay it right now. You don't want to be in a position where 3 months from now you all of a sudden owe $8,000 and you're in a default scenario because you can't pay it.
Yeah.
That's on the personal mortgage side. On the business side, on the SBA loan side and the commercial side, it's a lot different. We are seeing true forgivenesses of payments there. We are seeing things postponed without lump sum payments. So it seems to be more forgiving on the business side than the personal side. But before you do anything, talk to your lender, talk to your banker, talk to whoever that loan is through and find out the details. Here's the other thing too I'm seeing. I've seen this on probably 85% of the case over the last 10 days. Mortgage companies and lenders, when people are asking for forgiveness, they're saying, absolutely, we won't draft your payment this month. You're good. 85% of them are still getting drafted. The banks, the mortgage companies, everybody is overwhelmed with phone calls and work, and I just don't think they're having the time to go in and process it timely enough to keep it from coming out. So if you ask 10 days ago for your payment to be deferred and they said yes, it's probably still going to auto draft if that's the case or over the next week. So just be prepared for that and know I'm seeing that almost 85% of the cases on the personal side and the business side.
Great point. So if you've asked and they've given you the deferral or it may make sense to go in and turn off that auto draft just in case.
That's right. You may want to block it because it's probably coming through. Here's something else too, and this is kind of life in general, but especially right now. Get whatever you're discussing in writing. Get a follow-up email or get an email, or you need to get what you're being told from your mortgage company or your lender in writing, because they're dealing with thousands of phone calls and thousands of different things. They've hired new people. This is is chaos and unprecedented. The more you can get in writing, the better you're going to be 4 and 6 months down the road.
Awesome. So great information there. And I think that all of us can use that with clients if they have questions right now, because our job is to be communicating as much information with the public as possible. So let's go ahead. We're going to spend the rest of the time on this, getting into the programs that are available to us as business owners. So today is April 10th, and we are now open to apply for the PPP as 1099s. Talk to me a little bit about what the PPP program is and how it can help sustain our businesses through this.
Absolutely. And yeah, you're right. Today is the first day a 1099 or independent contractor or sole proprietor can apply. Businesses have been able to apply for about a week now. It technically opened up last Friday, but really it wasn't working until Friday evening, and a lot of applications didn't go in until early this week. And there's still a lot of business applications that are still being processed that haven't gone in yet, but it's a lot smoother. So the good news is, on the independent 1099 contractor side, sole proprietor side, you're coming in right now as of today with more knowledge and more clarity than anybody had a week ago when they were applying from the business side. Now, all that being said, your bankers are getting almost zero guidance from the SBA right now on the 1099 and contractor side. I talked to one of my buddies who runs a bank here in town last night, and they're choosing to wait till Monday to submit these. They just don't have any news and any updates from the SBA on this self-employment side. And he just wants to wait to see what happens over the next couple of days and get a little more clarity and a little more guidance on some things so they can better serve their customers, which I think is pretty smart because, again, we got applications going in today and no real knowledge from the SBA. But here's what I do know. So the PPP program, the Paycheck Protection Program loan, is a forgiveness program. It's built to loan you approximately 2 months of payroll and other expenses as a forgiveness portion. And the whole motivation behind it is to keep employees on your payroll so they're not drawing unemployment, and so they're not sitting at home not getting paid. It's a way for businesses to get a loan, pay their employees for 8 more weeks, and it to be totally forgiven from a payback standpoint. Now, they've extended this to the self-employment contractor 1099 side. And what that means for a lot of you agents is, if you're a 1099 agent, if you're a self-employed sole proprietor agent, you're just a contractor, you qualify under this self-employment provision. So what they're going by, since you don't have payroll, you don't have employees, they're going by your net profit. So they're considering your net profit your own personal payroll. So let's use an example. Let's say an agent has a great year in 2019. They brought in $150,000 in commission, and on their 19 Schedule C of their tax return, they wrote off $50,000 worth of mileage and advertising and expenses and cell phones and home office and all those other good things we can use as write-offs as a real estate agent. And your net profit was $100,000. So the PPP program is going to take that 100 grand. They're going to say, okay, that 100 was your payroll for 2019. We're going to divide it by 12, and we're going to times that by 2.5, and that's your loan amount. So in these cases, whether you showed a $20,000 profit or 50 or 80 or 100 or a $5,000 profit, if you showed a profit as an agent on your tax return on the Schedule C, then you qualify for this PPP. Now, if you haven't filed 19, what they're doing is they're allowing you to submit financials. So as a self-employed agent, as a 1099 contractor, you can create a P&L. A P&L is a profit and loss statement. It's the same thing you put together for your tax return, It's just in a more professional business format. You put your commissions paid and then you list your expenses and it gives you a net profit. So the banks and the SBA, if you haven't filed your 19 return as an agent on a Schedule C, then they're allowing you to submit a profit and loss and go by that. So the documents you need to do this, and each bank is different. That's what makes this a little tricky. All this is done through your bank. It's done through your local bank, your banker. They submit everything to the SBA. Some banks are doing it manual. Some banks are doing it through an online portal. Some banks are kind of doing a hybrid. So depending on your bank, there's a different process for doing it, and there's different documents needed. You're going to have your last file tax return, whether it's 18 or 19. You're going to have either a 2019 Schedule C from your tax return or a P&L statement for 19. You're going to have to prove you were in business as of February 15th, 2020. So you need a 2020 profit and loss. You need a January and February profit and loss to submit to show you're still in business and you were in business before this took place. Now, there's one other piece that makes it a little more tricky. If you are a new business, if you're a new agent, if you just came on board in July of last year and we're only here for the last part of the year, then you don't have to average last year's. You can take January and February's commission and expenses, get your net, use the average of that in this 2.5 times formula. So for me, if my average net as an agent was $10,000, well, let's use something smaller to make it kind of the numbers work per the requirements. The reason I say that, there's a $100,000 cap. You can't take advantage of this forgiveness program and loan program for anything in excess of 100 grand. So if you profited 140 grand last year as an agent, you're only getting credit for 100 for this program. It's capped at $100,000. But let's say as an agent, my average net is $5,000 a month. That's my net profit. Then you take this 5,000, you times it by 2.5, which will be 12,500. That's the amount I can borrow through the PPP loan through my banker. I borrow 12,500, and all I've got to do over the 8-week period of when I get the money is I've got to write myself checks as the owner payroll to meet or exceed that. And I can also include my rent and my utilities and my interest on it if you have a business loan or a business mortgage, and that is forgiven. So essentially, it's a lot easier on the forgiveness side for the 1099 contractor or the self-employed, because pretty much you get the loan, you're going to get it forgiven because you're paying yourself, and you just write yourself checks to equal that amount you borrowed over an 8-week period. I know it gets a little complicated to walk through in a format like this, but Chris, do we need to clarify some things?
Let's talk a little bit about the qualification. So first off, is there a credit score involved in this at all, or is this just based off of numbers?
No credit score, no collateral, strictly based off this formula of average monthly payroll. Okay. And again, I put payroll in percentage because it's your net average pay. It's your net as an agent.
Now, I want to talk about one of the caveats with this. Now, that's straight 1099. Okay, so if you are 1099 and then you write off, it's whatever your AGI is, or after you write off your net profit. What about if you run an S Corp? How does that impact your business there?
Great question. And you're getting negatively impacted. So if you've got a good CPA, if you've been guided properly in the past from an agent, you've probably got an S Corp if you're making over 20 or 30 grand. It has by far been the smart play. It's saved you 15.3% of taxes on your net on the history of being structured this way. But if you're a single member S Corp and you don't take a payroll, a true W-2 payroll, meaning you go through payroll and pay Social Security and Medicare and taxes and all those things every month, and most people do not. Most people in the agent side have a single member S Corp and they just take owner distributions. Well, in that case, you are not going to qualify for the PPP loan. You don't have W-2 payroll. You're a corporation, not an independent contractor, not an individual. So you by qualification purposes under these rules are not going to qualify, and you're not going to be eligible to borrow money or get it forgiven through the PPP side. However, I say that if you haven't filed 19 return and your brokerage gave you a 1099 in your personal name and social instead of in the business name, you may be able to use that to somewhat manipulate the process and take advantage of the PPP. But by definition and by everything we've read and understand, a single member S Corp without W-2 payroll is not going to qualify under this self-employment side, because you don't file it on the personal return. You're not an independent contractor. You're a business. You're a corporation, and essentially you're a corporation without payroll.
So your person needs to either receive a W-2 or a 1099. It can't be passed through an S corp, because most of us on the S corp side get a K1.
That's right.
So we're filing taxes off the K1. It has to be a 1099 or a W-2 in order to qualify for this. So what are the expenses that the PPP can be used for and written off? I know payroll is one of them.
That's right. Payroll costs are one of them. The second one is rent. Any sort of rent you have, that's office rent, that's storage building rent, that's anything on the rental side. And you're going to have to show a lease or some version of payment in a lease to get this forgiveness. It's utility bills, and utility bills have not been clarified in the bill itself or after the fact. So I think there's a pretty wide net around utility bills. I think that's, of course, power and gas and water. It also probably is going to include telephone and cell phone and internet, trash service, may even go out to include some sort of types of different software and things as classified as utilities. We haven't seen any defining guidance there on the utility side. And keep in mind, this forgiveness portion of providing these things don't really come in until 8 weeks down the road. So we are going to see some more clarity and some more detail there. We just haven't got it yet. And then the last piece is interest. If you have business interest, if you have another loan you're paying interest on, if you have a mortgage you're paying interest on that's business related for the business or the self-employed person, then that's part of that forgiveness also. And what you do, you take these expenses that qualify, and from the day you get the PPP loan, it starts that day and it's over an 8-week period. So in my example before, if you borrowed $12,500, as long as you spend over an 8-week period $12,500 on these qualified expenses, you don't have to pay anything back. It is all forgiven.
So let's talk a little bit about the EIDL, because that's another option for people that are out there that don't qualify for the PPP. What is the EIDL?
So the EIDL is a loan and a grant, and there's been so much attention around this, and it has not met expectations. EIDL stands for
Economic Injury Disaster Relief Loan.
You got it. Thank you for that.
Disaster
It is a program that has been in place historically through the SBA for disasters, tsunamis, hurricanes, earthquakes, crazy stuff going on. And what they've done is they've implemented this program in a different format for this pandemic. It's all through the SBA. It's all through the SBA website. And what it was designed and what it historically has been is as a business or a person doing business. This is a business loan, but an independent contractor is a business. A 1099 agent is a business. A person that owns rental property is a business. It is everything from C Corps to S Corps to rental property owners to LLCs to sole proprietors. If you conduct business and you own some sort of business, you can apply for this. There is no rules for who can and can't apply as long as you're a business. Now, I say that we don't know what the heck they're going to approve or deny. So you can apply, but that doesn't have anything to do with whether you're going to receive it. And historically, what this has been, it is up to a $2 million loan based on credit score only. Business information, you provide very little business information. You provide your 2019 revenue, your 2019 cost of goods, your 2019 expenses. You don't send them tax returns. You don't send them financials. You provide 3 versions of numbers. You answer a few questions. You provide your social so they can do a credit check, and they're going to qualify you for up to a $2 million loan under this EIDL program. It is a 6-month deferral on payments. You don't have to make your first payment for 6 months. It is a cap on a 4% interest rate in a 10-year AM. So historically, a business was struggling because of a disaster and had some things go on.
Hurricane, natural
Yeah,
disaster.
they can borrow $100,000 or they can borrow $200,000 through this program. You get a low rate, you get a long-term payback. It's all got to be paid back. There is no forgiveness under the traditional EIDL. Well, the component they've added as part of this stimulus package is a $10,000 grant. So when you're applying for the EIDL, there's a box you can check. Do you want to apply to receive the $10,000 grant? Most everybody's checking that because of course we do. And the grant is a grant. If you get approved for the EIDL, you don't have to pay the $10,000 back. If you get denied by the EIDL, you get to keep the $10,000 as well. If you choose to get the PPP and turn down the EIDL, you still get to keep the $10,000, but the $10,000 factors into your PPP calculation. So there's all sorts of mix and matching. What you can't do the real EIDL loan, not the grant. You can't do the EIDL loan and choose to accept and take that if you're approved, and the PPP. You've got to choose the PPP or the EIDL loan. Now, here's what's happening though. Here's an update there. An article, a lot of people applied a week ago. A lot of people applied 11, 12 days ago. You were supposed to hear back on the $10,000 grant in 3 days. People applied. They said in 3 days, you'll get an email telling you were denied and why, or $10,000 are going to show up in your bank account. That's how it works. Well, that has not happened. I'm not aware of that happening either side of that for anybody. I've got thousands of clients. I've got thousands of contacts. I've got connections on social media. I have not had a single connection with anybody that has got approved or denied yet. And for a lot of people, it's been over a week. I had somebody, a business owner here in town, call the SBA on Friday of last week. They said the timeline had been changed from 3 days to 7 days. But here it's been 7 days and still a lot of people haven't heard. There was an article that came out in the New York Times yesterday afternoon that said this thing is almost frozen up, that it's a mess, that they expected, I think it was a couple million applications and they got twice that. They're struggling with where the funds are going to come from. They're struggling on how to process it, and it's pretty much froze up the system. There's also in this article statements of people that applied that said they were approved for $10,000, but then got $3,800, or that there was something in place there where they were looking at trying to do just $1,000 per employee of the business or per person with the business, and you wasn't going to get the full $10,000. There's some stories in there where people got approved for $25,000 of an EIDL loan, and then the paperwork came and it was only a loan for $8,300. Now, this is in a New York Times article. You can check it out. It's yesterday afternoon. You can Google New York Times EIDL. It'll pop up. This is what I'm reading. I still have zero connection and experience with anybody that's applied that's got approved or denied. So everybody's still waiting here. Everybody's trying to figure out what's going on. You can still apply for the EIDL. You can still apply for the grant. It's all through the SBA website. Now, what's going to come of all this? I have no idea.
So the takeaway that I'm getting from what you're saying is apply to everything.
That's
and
right.
Apply for the PPP, apply for the grant, and apply for the EIDL if you absolutely need the EIDL, because that one you would have to repay. But if you get approved for, say, the grant and the PPP, but denied the EIDL, like you can go and take the PPP and you still get that grant. Now, if you get the grant, everything, like you got that $10,000 no matter what, or whatever they approve you for on the grant, right? Because it's max 10,000.
That's right.
Okay, so if you get the if you get the grant, whatever that is, you don't have to pay that back. If you get denied for the EIDL, you get denied for the PPP, you get that check.
That's right.
And if you get the grant, but then say what happens if you get the PPP? What happens with those grant funds?
Yeah, good question. And keep in mind, this grant has got a pretty wide net. It just says it's got to be spent on business stuff. You can't just sit on the money. You still got to spend it, but it's not near as specific as the PPP funds. You can just spend it on paying off business loans, on spending on business expenses, on doing things on the business side. So if you get the $10,000 grant, it's pretty much you're not going to have to pay it back in that format. You just need to go spend it in some version. Now, if you get the $10,000 grant and you do the PPP and you get approved for both, let's say your PPP loan was $20,000, and then you also got the $10,000 grant. Well, your forgiveness on the PPP is not going to be necessarily on 20 anymore. You're going to get forgiven 10 of that, and the other 10 is going to be part of that grant money of that forgiveness. So it really all works together. You're not going to really have to pay anything back. It's just going to change that formula and that calculation a little bit for you. And it's really confusing because depending on where you read, that scenario changes a little bit. But I agree with you, Chris. Apply for everything. It's all cheap money. It's all money at great rates or free money. Apply for everything, see what you get approved for, and then make some decisions about what's the smartest decision for you or your business. And you can do all that, as it comes in. And again, keep in mind too, this week, there's lots of panic. There's lots of chaos about running out of money. There's 349 billion isolated just for the PPP loan. Trump went back to Congress this week and asked for another 250 billion. So it just doesn't seem like they're going to let the money run out. Who knows? This is probably going to be a $6 trillion stimulus by the time it's all said and done from what we're reading. But just don't get in a hurry to make bad decisions. Evaluate your options, evaluate what you get approved for, and make the best decisions for you at the time.
Awesome. So I want to let everybody know, we've got a couple of questions I want to answer before we wrap up that are really good ones. So do you know what the credit score is for the EIDL?
We do not. They have not gave us any information on what they're using to approve or deny people. So the bankers don't know. We don't know. I had somebody call into the SBA and ask, and they didn't provide that. So it's somewhat flying blind from that standpoint.
Awesome. And for applications, so the EIDL, where do they apply? And the grant?
So the EIDL and the grant is all part of the same application. It's on the SBA website. You go to sba.gov. It's easy to navigate there and find it. And it's all done through the same application. So you just follow the links. It seriously takes less than 5 minutes, and it asks you very little financial information. It's pretty straightforward. Now, on the PPP side, that is done directly through your bank or banker. There is a 3-page application. You've got to put financials and 941s and tax returns or profit and losses or Schedule Cs with it. Keep in mind, each bank is different, but all of that is done through an application process through your bank and banker. Some are doing it online, some are doing it DocuSign, some are doing it manual. So just get with your bank and banker. They'll help you navigate what to apply for. They'll help you with the formula, and you fill out the application, you put the supporting docs with it. And what I'm hearing right now is we should start seeing money for the PPPs come in next week. They have up to 60 days, but the bankers that have some influence that I'm talking to right now that are staying well connected with the SBA of what's going on are saying funding is probably going to start coming in next week. Now, here's the tricky part. The bankers have 10 days to get the loan finalized after it's approved with the client.
That's
So you've got
sounds good.
paperwork and signage and underwriting to do on tens or hundreds of thousands of loans that are going to get approved here in the next week or two, that the banks have got to figure out how to get out and get you to sign and get all the information and get the money to you. So it is not going to be a smooth process. So just have some patience and understand everybody's working as hard as they can to try to make it happen.
Awesome. Well, Chad, we're at 11 o'clock. I want to thank you so much for spending an hour with us to go over and answer all these questions for our Georgia realtors. Now, for everybody, if you missed or you want to recap something, I have been streaming this live on YouTube. This is recorded. This will be dispersed to at least the Cobb Association of Realtors. And we'll go through and send a resource link out afterwards to everybody that was registered. So if you have any follow-up, just let us know. In that email that we send out to everybody, we'll make sure that we include Chad's contact information. But Chad is at the tax shelter. Chad, do you want to leave your email address if they want to reach out to you right now?
Sure. If you have questions or you need more information, my email address is chad@thetaxshelter.com. Also trying to release a lot of updated information and videos on Instagram is @serial CFO. So make sure you follow along on Instagram, and as news and things are coming out, I'm trying to update everybody on social media as well.
Awesome. Well, Chad, thank you so much. Thank you to everybody to participate in joining us today. We really appreciate it. And if you have any questions, you can shoot me an email as well. It's broker@selectrealty.com with 2 L's in select. We'll make sure that we get these questions answered for you. Have a great day, everyone.